Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Our first part of this episode was outstanding. Previously we had Jessica and Georgia who are mindset coaches. Now we have Pastor Josh and Kathy who are physical coaches. So we're going to jump back into the content. I hope you enjoy.
Now, having said that, I realize that this is an area that people are hesitant to talk about. Absolutely. Yeah, they're hesitant to talk about exercise and nutrition. So, Josh, Kathy, what would be your greatest concerns concerning these two, because they are related? What would be some of your greatest concerns that would help people get over this hesitancy to, talk about it, think seriously about it, and start taking the steps? And they don't have to be huge in the beginning. They can be very small. What are some of the things that stand out? Your concern or counsel for people that are listening and saying, you know what, this is an area in my life that I need to steward as well?
Well, one thing that comes to my mind is, I think, I'll speak for myself. Sometimes you battle shame, like shame that I'm not good enough, I can't attain that, the lies of the enemy, like I'll never get to that point, or I could never do that, or I'm just not, this is just who I am. Maybe just a shame of where I'm at as a woman, as a mother, and just the lies of the enemy that you don't have time, you're not worth it, you're not valuable, but that's not true. God sees us as valuable. He loves us. We are valuable and have worth in His sight. And I think I have needed to see that I am valuable to God. My body is valuable, and therefore I need to take care of it and steward it, like you're saying, because it's important to Him. He created me, and out of honor and respect to Him, I want to take care of my body and do any little step. And I think sometimes it can be overwhelming, like, I got to lose so much weight, or I need to do this, or cut this out of my diet. But it's like you said, what's one small thing I can do to make a change?
Well, that statement on shame is very necessary, because we're not saying, and the reason for looking at this is not saying that anyone is unworthy of God's love, or that somehow God's love is related to the percentage of body fat that you have. We're not saying that at all. God loves us, has shown that, has demonstrated that, in that He gave His only begotten Son for us. And you said earlier, reminding ourselves all the time that God loves us is pushing back against the spirit of fear that is being propagated so much today. But all we're saying is to stop, to say, if Jesus had to develop in this area, then, and Josh mentioned earlier about the number of miles he walked. Think about being a carpenter, a blacksmith in those days without modern technology and tools. I'm sure that contributed to his overall well-being. So we're not in any way trying to shame people. We're saying, you know what? there are simple steps that you can take. You just have to simply be aware and have a plan. And, full disclosure, I'm already convicted because my assistant just brought me over 2 loaves of freshly baked apricot cranberry artisan bread.
Wow.
Pastor.
And now I'm...
Well, I think that, that's one thing that a lot of times, it's all or nothing. And that's really the struggle with eating, because, food is there for a reason. It's something that we need. There are times and places for all types of food.
Plus it's a blessing.
That's
You'd
right.
agree?
Yeah.
Because I learned that from another hero in your life, which is your dad.
That's right. That's right.
Who would constantly, that's where the ice cream comes from, because he's one of the consummate ice cream addicts that I know of.
Connoisseur, a true connoisseur.
Connoisseur, much better word. And so it isn't, I think if you don't balance it, you miss the blessing part of it. Because if it was just to keep us alive, there would be, 1 or 2 or 3 things. But God has created a multitude of things. So it is both necessary, but it's also a blessing. And I love the statement that it's not all or nothing. And so how would you help people who maybe their mindset has been incorrect? It's been all or nothing. What would you say to them to motivate them in a better path?
Well, the first thing I would say, which it's a great question, because it's where do I begin, in a way? How do I get started? Or I am started, but here's where I've hit some obstacles or roadblocks along the way. All of us, because we've been alive, this is a journey that we're all on. But I would say the first thing that we all need to keep in mind is it's always awkward and it's always uncomfortable to do something new. So if we're going to start caring about nutrition, it's going to be uncomfortable and it's going to be awkward. And we have to kind of embrace that. That's something that when I got saved, I realized that the life that I had been living was not compatible with the life that God had for me. Mm-hmm. And it was 100% awkward. Mm-hmm. Saying sorry to people or repenting or humbling myself. And so in the same way, that's the Christian life, is coming to Jesus and saying, help me, I need some help here. So to be able to accept the fact that we don't know everything and that my way isn't always the best way is probably the first start, is to say, like, I'm open to being awkward. I need help. Now, like you said, ice cream isn't always bad. It's not always bad to eat carbs and sugars, and it's not always bad to eat fats and in those, in the foods that we have. However, when there has become, an imbalance, and that's probably the word that is used, probably one of the most frequently used words that I would use as a trainer, but also in nutrition, is when there's an imbalance, that's when we start seeing the consequences that are negative. When you use a joint or a muscle in an imbalanced way, that's when pain starts to happen, with overuse, issues. When it comes to nutrition, if there's an imbalance, that's when we start seeing the negative areas, start to take place. And so one of the things that we have to do physically is be open for help. Mm-hmm. So asking for help is a great way to do it. Yeah. It's also delving into that world. If I'm going to start working out, I can't walk into a gym or, buy a gym, a home gym set and expect to be, to know every movement and every angle the right way. And just because I purchase a video online that tells me what to do doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing it correctly, which could pose potential injury. Yeah. So it's just a little bit at a time. And if I could say one thing that we could start is just do something.
Yeah.
So it's gonna feel awkward, but just pick one thing. I had a client that lost 10 pounds in a month just by having a disciplined bedtime. Wow. So this is not the nutrition didn't change, the workout didn't change, the water intake didn't change, but he recognized that he wasn't getting enough sleep, and so he lost 10 pounds of not muscle but body fat in that period of time. It was a radical change, and he was almost embarrassed to confess it was because I slept this time. Another client that it was an elderly lady. She lost somewhere between 5 and 10 pounds in also a short amount of time, just because she started paying attention to how much water she was drinking per day, and she increased her water intake, and she realized that she was a little bit dehydrated. So in a physical way, it's just thinking about one thing at a time. When that happened, she realized that she had all this energy, so her workouts improved. Her nutrition, and she saw that she's seeing results, all of a sudden her nutrition improved. Same thing that happened with the client that got a good night's sleep. When he started losing that weight, he worked out harder. His nutrition improved. He said, I'm getting results. And so when I said it's all connected, that happens in a physical way as well. So if we say, I'm just going to cut out, let's say, refined sugar, or maybe Snickers is our thing, or whatever it might be, a Neapolitan sandwich. Say, I'm gonna fast Neapolitan sandwiches, except for on the weekend. That might have a huge change, but just that one decision leads to another decision, and there's a domino effect, and we start seeing results. When it comes to health and nutrition, it's a huge world.
Yeah, it is.
And so it is overwhelming and a little bit intimidating, and even the nutrition and health from 50 years ago, where cyclists would smoke, to increase lung capacity or oxygen consumption, that's changed. And so
doctors would smoke.
That's right.
And they do, doctors prefer, and they do television commercials.
Right. So obviously that health recommendation has changed over the years, but for us, as we're trying to be good stewards, it's going to be the daily decisions. And I can promise you the decisions that I make every day for my health and nutrition are much different than my wife's. And our lives are interconnected in so many ways. However, when it comes to this area, I have a conviction that's much different than her conviction, and I believe it's from God. And I think that God speaks to me in certain things in my life that I need to do that she can get away with, and vice versa. There's things that she's, and I would say that would be for all of us. And so it's going to be uncomfortable as the first part, is recognize that. And the next thing is make one decision. And if there's something that I believe God's always speaking to us at all he's trying to, speak to us. And if he speaks to us, then we should do what he tells us to do. And then I think he'll give us the next step along the way. So these are just a couple of basic things, but
let's all stop and
drink some water.
Let's all take our drink of water right now. Well, we took a little break, and while we were on that break, we were talking about exciting things, how that you can substitute for potatoes, rutabagas and turnips, and also sweet potato fries. But since I'm the chef of the house, if we keep this up, we're never gonna finish. But I did want to ask a question, Josh, because one of the things that you made clear is that when it comes to overall wellness, and wellness that involves us physically, that there are no shortcuts. And so you live in Southern California, so you live, as I said in our last episode, you live in the epicenter of wellness. You live where most every fad under the sun, when it comes to nutrition, exercise, these fads, some new revolutionary, never before heard of diet, all of those, and maybe that's too extreme, but a lot of them come out of Southern California. But because you said there are no shortcuts, and why don't you elaborate on that to get the momentum back from sweet potato fries to...
Well, I wish I could take a shortcut and get some potato fries right now. But what I've experienced, and I think this would probably, unless somehow intersected by God's amazing grace, and the things that we value and treasure in life typically are things that have been obtained, within the plan of God over a period of time, and have required a certain amount of focus and intentionality or discipline in getting there. For example, I would love to have Pastor Warner's ministry as a pastor, but that didn't come because Pastor Warner took a 3-month course and acquired the impact worldwide. It's a result of decades of listening to God and staying faithful. And so when I aspire to that, in that direction as a pastor, I'm going to make the same connection in the physical sense, is that discipline and a daily attention to our physical, stewardship, as we've used it, is what brings us to the point where we are healthy and capable. We talked about taking, is it okay if I eat a Snickers bar, or it's okay if I eat a bowl of ice cream? Now, the answer is yes and no, depending on where we are. But if we've lived a life of discipline and structure in that area of eating healthy and eating right, one bowl of ice cream isn't going to turn the body off track. It's not going to sit on your stomach for days and months and weeks. However, if we've trained our body that ice cream is the primary source of nutrition, and that's something as a part of our daily routine, then the body learns that that's something that has to be used and acquired, and that's where nutrition's coming from. So how we've disciplined our body over the long haul will determine what will happen as we eat different things. So one example is I found a new diet or a new eating plan, and I'm going to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds in the next month. Now that sounds really appealing, and it's actually something that many of us would say, yeah, for sure. If I could lose 20 pounds in a month, that's great. However, the way that the body works is that radical weight loss typically isn't healthy. What the science and those that study fat loss, weight loss, and the different dynamics have learned is that 1 to 2 pounds per week for an average person is healthy. Once we start losing more than 2 pounds per week, then we risk losing muscle. Now, without getting into the technicalities here, muscle is what burns calories in your body. Muscle is the primary calorie. The two variables are fat and muscle. So if we start losing muscle, then we're losing the ability to burn calories. So if we lose a lot of muscle during a certain diet plan, then what happens is we lose our capacity, 10%, 20%, 30% of the calories that we burn per day. And so that's why you see the rebound where people say, I lost 20 pounds and then I gained it all back and now I'm like 10 pounds heavier than I started with. It's because they've lost the capacity to burn the calories because the muscle has been consumed. Because what happens is the body, when we shock it with some extreme risk, the body doesn't like that. And so in like layman's terms, what the body tries to do is protect itself from danger. So if we're not eating enough calories, the body's going to try to cut back on the muscle to be able to, maintain functionality without losing all of the energy that's coming in. So for example, if one day we eat, 500 calories, the next day we eat 1,500 calories, the next day we eat 5,000, the body's going to be preparing for the 500 calorie day. So it's going to destroy the muscle that's not necessary so that it can live on the 500 calories. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so as it lives on that 500 calories, that's not healthy muscles. That's not healthy shoulders. That's not healthy, legs and calves and, our back muscles. And so it destroys that muscle. And so, you've lost, 20 pounds, but if you lost 20 pounds of muscle, all of a sudden now you're in a greater risk of tearing a shoulder or tearing a knee or, spraining your ankle if you misstep. And you're going to have much greater, now you have to maintain a low calorie eating plan just to be able to stay at that weight, but it's at a weight that you're not feeling good. You're not feeling energetic. You're not capable of doing the things that you would like to do. So the shortcut of a quick weight loss or a quick program might have a more is going to sacrifice something else that you might think is valuable. If, for example, my personal testimony with sugar is every morning with my cup of coffee, I put a ton of sugar. I did it for decades. And when I began to learn in nutrition, the impact of sugar upon, a body, the addictive properties of it and, what it's capable of, I was really convicted. So I did a little experiment in my own personal life. So for 1 week, what I did is I removed the coffee out of my system. It is also kind of a bet with one of my Mormon clients who told me that coffee was, not from God and that I shouldn't be drinking caffeine.
Well,
and so I wanted to show him that it had
this is it.
No consequence. And so I did this bet. So I eliminated the caffeine from my diet for that week to see what would happen. And of course, nothing happened. I didn't feel headaches. I didn't feel hungover or anything like that. So the next week, I was like, well, now that I'm on it, I'm going to try something else. I cut out the sugar. And honestly, for like 48 hours, I couldn't get out of bed. I was so sick. I couldn't open the blinds because I cut sugar out completely from my diet for those days, and it had such a powerful effect. Now, you might say, Josh, man, you had a problem eating sugar, and I would agree. But what happened was that the physical effect of that. Now, recognize that also I wasn't going to prayer. I couldn't even read. So I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't caring about anybody but myself. So I was totally selfish, but it showed me how powerful sugar had the effect on my body. So, the issue of nutrition. Now, if you shock your body in those ways, it's very difficult to go through, like to be able to have the result without the consequence. So, when it comes to taking shortcuts, that's something that there is no shortcut, so to speak. And to be able to train your body in any way, whether it be spiritually or physically, it's going to require the day by day, discipline. I would tell all my clients 20 minutes a day of working out is much more beneficial than 1 day a week for 2.5 hours.
Talking about sugar, what do you think about Fruit Loops with half and half?
So there's an interesting dynamic that takes place when you have a carb or like a simple carb like Fruit Loops, and you have half and half, which is primarily fat. When you have those two combined, that is the fastest way to gain body fat.
Mm-hmm. I don't know where I heard that from.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So when you put those together,
I don't know who was eating that.
Probably my dad, but he would have Raisin Bran with half and half. That was his go-to breakfast for years. But the problem with that is that the carbs and the fats together, so the body uses the carbs because that's a simple sugar. It's like burning fire. It's like a quick burn. And the fat, because it's not used, gets stored for later. So that's French fries, ice cream. That's the same
I don't want to
combinations.
ask this question, but I'm going to. What about because we just our last segment with Dr. Hamilton was how to keep your mind sharp, and they did talk about your morning cup of coffee, how that it was helpful, but what about my quad 4 shots of espresso with a little bit of half and half?
So you want me to give my opinion on the nutritional content of the quad?
I need. I've got to personalize this. Pastor Warner needs. He needs full-on truth here.
Okay. Well,
he may not like it.
2 tablets straight into the golden calf right here.
so I'm sitting at your kitchen table across from Pastor Warner in Tucson. So I have to be really careful how I answer this question. So one of the things that's really interesting about caffeine that studies have shown, so caffeine has some benefits and some risks. So for example, caffeine can elevate your heart rate, blood pressure. Mm-hmm. It has that potential. So it depends on where you're at. So when we talk about nutrition, it's very personal. So where your heart, if stimulants affect you, then that might be a dangerous thing. That might not be something that you want to do. Now, caffeine also is really cool because I learned this from another Mormon, which was really interesting. When I was in Utah, is that there's these studies, and he showed me the studies, is that it actually, they've found out that caffeine may help in restoring like brain issues, let's say like memory loss or
cognitive issues.
That's right. So it helps in those ways. So almost like GPS alternate route. So it almost creating different, like new neural pathways. Now, that's not my field of expertise, but when I read the article, I found that really interesting. So caffeine, it depends on where you're at. And
I'll grab this second.
I like that too.
Yeah, and it also is saying that Mormons need to be born again.
That's right.
Etc.
That's right.
So
that's right.
We're
so here's the next question the next answer with your morning enjoyment is the issue of dairy. Now, dairy is a big one. If you were to talk to a lot of nutritionists right away, if you're having nutrition issues, they're going to recommend strongly that you eliminate dairy. That means cheese, milk, anything like that.
Butter, sour cream.
Yeah, so Kathy is...
That's, for a chef, this is heresy, but I'm going to listen because that's how you learn.
So you asked the question. So for me personally, I have noticed that the more dairy that I have in my diet, the drier my skin, and the more likely, because I have dry skin genetically, that I was, so it doesn't really bother me unless I eat a lot of dairy. If I eat a lot of dairy, then it almost like dehydrates my skin. And I find myself needing to drink more water because of and they'll say some allergies that people might have would be affected by dairy. So dairy is probably, if the caffeine isn't bothering you, and you don't notice stress, because there's some people that drink coffee and they feel stress and anxiety because of that. Then
it's only 1 cup too. It's not
right.
2 or 3 or 4 or 5. It's just 1 in the morning.
Right. So the other half of that would be the dairy. So if the dairy, not everybody has a problem with dairy, but if that happens to be, for me, whenever I hear these things, the first thing I do is I'm going to try it and see what happens. Unless it's like against the word of God, or if it's something that it's inappropriate, If you tell me that if I start eating asparagus, I eat a serving of asparagus for every meal, I'm going to try it just to see what happens, because what if it has that advantage and all of a sudden, the benefits are far outweigh the sacrifice of, what that would mean. And so for me, I cut out dairy for a period of time just to see what would happen. And it was pretty cool. So, actually I almost always avoid dairy, but I'm not I'm not religious about it. So
I get it. I asked the question, so I've got to live with. I have to live with the consequences. But
Yes,
this
sir.
is what this is about. We can have a conversation, and we can all learn.
Let's jump down the rabbit hole, because in the West, right, like we are raised on dairy, right? There's a lot of things that we are raised culturally with, right? So we're a multicultural society. However, we're kind of homogenous, right? We're different, but we're all the same in that we all eat dairy, we all eat way too much fat, we all eat way too much processed food. So out the gate, I think, you have to make a conscious decision to live healthy, as opposed to maybe people who live in other places, growing up different transportation arrangements, right? They don't have to make those same decisions. They don't have to even think about that, right? They can eat a baguette and drink their latte, and everything's fine, because they're 5'10", 140, and that's how it always be, and they'll never have to think about it. So here in the West, how psychologically, how do we have to approach this? I mean, is this something we have to put a game face on, or do we just live our lives? Or how do you approach it, just knowing that the deck is kind of stacked against us? That's my millennial crybaby question.
I mean, so one of the things that Kathy's done pretty cool is that she has jumped all in on that nutrition and has voluntarily made some decisions as far as her nutrition and going a certain direction. And so I don't know if you want to talk about how you came there, but I think that it's a really good question. It's something that we all need to.
Well, I'm going to just go back and share a little bit about my health story and journey. But when Josh and I first got married, I was diagnosed with Pcos, which is Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, which means you have a lot of cysts on your ovaries, and it makes you have, it affects your menstrual cycle, irregular cycles, makes it very difficult to have children. And so that was very discouraging to me, because we wanted to have kids. And so I was put on the birth control pill, but I didn't feel good while I was on it. And just to regulate my body. And then I was like, no, I don't want to be on this. I want to have kids. So we were just trying, and we were praying. And I didn't make any other changes per se, but we were praying and seeking God. And at a Miracle Healing Crusade, we got prayer, and I became pregnant with our first child, Marcus. So it was a real miracle and answer to prayer. I mean, honestly, when I went to the doctor for my first checkup, they were like, when was your last cycle? And I was like, I don't know. It was that off. And so God did a miracle in my body. It's by the grace of God that I have 3 children, and I continued to be, have irregular cycles through that time. Then after my third, I was experiencing just more symptoms of the PCOS and going to the doctor and just wanting to put me on medicines and more birth control pills. And I just felt very discouraged. And I was just like, God, I want to be healthy, and I want to be whole, and I want to be healed. And I would just pray, and God, what can I do? Because I don't want to live like this and be on this. And I truly believe God directed me online. I found this one online pamphlet type book about the miracle, kind of cure for PCOS. And I was like, Josh, do you care if I buy it? It was probably $15 or something. And I read it, and it was basically take responsibility, deal with your health and what you eat and your diet and your nutrition, and what he's talking about, exercise and supplements and vitamins. And like he said, I grew up a daughter of a doctor, and I found a lot of comfort in medicine. and in going to the doctor, and it's like, if there was a problem, like, Josh, I want to go to the doctor. Josh, I want to go to the doctor. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, I just found a lot of comfort in that. And so when I found this, and it was like, to take a step away from like what was comfortable for me to changing the way I was eating, and just like fully, it was really a huge step of faith for me that, okay, I'm going to go off the birth control pill, and I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to totally radically change. And it was encouraging me to cut out gluten and dairy and refined sugar. And so I did that for 1 month. And in 1 month, I gained my cycle. My cycle came in 1 month. And I was just like praising God and just like so excited. And I felt really encouraged. But the fact that I struggled with those things, I mentioned shame, is like, I felt a lot of shame as a woman because something's wrong with my body, with my hormones, like something's not right. And so I was just like really encouraged, and I saw God move in that. And so to me, it spoke like God was speaking to me, do these, make these changes. And I did, and like things happened. And then when we moved back to California, like this is while we were in Utah, but when we moved back to California, like, I've just been a private person, and like, I don't know. When I came back, I didn't want people to know I had a problem. Like I really didn't talk about like my health issue or my struggles. I mean, obviously people knew that it was hard for me to have kids because we got prayer and stuff, but I didn't want to be talked about. I didn't want to expose my weakness. I didn't want to like show that I'm flawed, or like convey that. And so I felt like I just would eat whatever. Like we'd go to gatherings or go to people's houses, and it's like, I'm not going to make a big deal about what I eat. I'm just going to eat whatever. And I just would make excuses. Sorry. And then a couple of years ago, my best friend of 20 years, she got cancer and she passed away. And then it was a very traumatic time for me, a very emotional, difficult time. And I remember I was going to sugar. I was like eating brownies for breakfast, and like I found comfort in the sugar, and I was looking for comfort. And food definitely has that role. It can play as a comfort. And I was like, this isn't what I want to do, and then my skin began reacting, and it's crazy because I went to a doctor and I spent a lot of money just to see this one well-known doctor. And it's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Again, going to the doctor, and he looked at me and he was like, you need to eat clean. You need to change your diet, which is what I had done years before. So I was like, okay, I have to do this. And a few weeks later, Josh and I were on a family vacation in the mountains, and I just spent that time like really like a mountaintop experience, just like praying and researching these health issues and seeking God. And I was reading a book at the same time, a Christian book, and one of the chapters was on compromise. And I just felt really convicted that I compromised what I felt I should do for my body. And I was like, I'm not going to compromise what I eat, like the food and what I feel like I need to do for the health of my body anymore. It's going to be known. I've dealt with, hormonal female issues. I've dealt with skin issues. I've dealt with stomach issues. Like, it's okay. It's got to be known. Like, let it be known. And I accept that. I take responsibility, and I'm setting some boundaries in my life now. And this is how it's going to be, and I'm going to take care of myself. And so it set me on a course. It's been about 1.5 years, and I've been pretty rigid, like I have been, like no gluten, no dairy, no soy, no refined sugar. And yes, Josh said it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to go to someone's house and ask what the ingredients are in the food that they're serving. It's uncomfortable to go to a restaurant and not be able to order whatever you want on the menu. But I have a conviction about it because I feel personally this is what God wants me to do, and what I have done, and I'm in no way saying anyone else needs to do it, and what I do is not the answer to anyone else's issues. like we've said, God has to speak to you about what you need to do personally. And so I've just done a lot of reading and researching and studying health and the body and just my own personal issues and what do I need to do to gain health and wholeness in my body, because I want to reflect Christ, so.
Wow.
Sorry if that's
too
long.
That's a great answer.
No, outstanding. And it just, it confirms everything we've been talking about, that we really do need God's wisdom. So Jesus grew in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God, in favor with man. And so what you're describing is instead of just, not thinking about these things and getting in every prayer line known to man, there may be some changes, there may be some wisdom that we can apply to our physical bodies that are going to bless us, that are going to strengthen us. So, hey, that's a fantastic testimony. I'm glad that you accompanied your husband. You balance him off in a fantastic way. And just to kind of close, I was thinking of the scripture we've been looking at where Jesus grew in wisdom, stature, favor with God, favor with man, is what precedes that verse is, we all know the story, how that Jesus and his extended family went up to Jerusalem for the Passover, and anyone with a large family and tios and tias know that, I don't see my kid, but he's probably in the caravan. They travel 2 days and realize Jesus isn't here. Go back to Jerusalem, this frantic search to find their son, and they discover him in the temple, talking and asking questions, listening to their questions. And Mary did what mothers do. She freaked out. And how could you have done this to us? Don't you know that your mom and dad were just, out of their mind with worry and concern? And Jesus wasn't disrespectful, but his answer says so much. He said, "Didn't you know that I had to be about my Father's business?" And so the backdrop to all of these areas, Jesus grew mentally, Jesus grew physically. We're going to talk about he grew spiritually, he grew relationally. The backdrop for all of that is his single-minded commitment to the Father's will and purpose. And so I think why that's so important is, we hear the horror stories of someone went out, they lost weight, they started feeling good about themselves, and then dump their husband or dump their wife for somebody else. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about our commitment is the Father's house and the Father's business. And so if we keep that at the forefront of our thinking, then in every one of these areas, like the song goes, it is well, we'll experience by the grace of God a wellness. And so this whole discussion today, I don't know how long it's gone on. We could continue. I've had a great deal of fun. I do know that I'm going to take seriously, Josh. I better find out what I can do for my shoulders.
Yes. By the way, I brought a creamer for you that I'm going to give you to try.
He did.
I came prepared.
Hey, beautiful. And I've learned about sweet potato fries. And so, like I said, as the chef of the house, I've been inspired. I'm sure Gabe's been inspired. He is the father of 3 children, and so I don't think there's a parent alive who isn't concerned about these things. And so I just want to say it's been a blessing to have you both with us. Well worth it. And you know what? It is but it can get better. That's the good thing.
That's right. Well, we're looking forward to heaven, right? So
yes.
It's always going the best direction.
Yes, it is. And so I've learned a great deal. And for all of our audience, I really hope that you've learned, you've been provoked in your thinking. I trust this has been as balanced as it can be, because yes, it is a topic that people can feel uncomfortable about, but hey, we're all learning. None of us have arrived. We just want to be better testimonies, and we want to be usable to God for as long as we can.
That's right.
And as well as we can.
That's right.
And so that's the backdrop is, didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business? That's our desire. And so all of you that are listening, that's our desire in talking about this today. Please pray about these things. Take them to heart and know, like Kathy said, that God loves you. Know, like Josh had said, that there is no shortcut. This is called life, and if there were shortcuts, I would have found them by now, because I'm just you. I'm looking for them. But listen, take it to heart, and as they've both have emphasized, hear what God's saying to you. Hear what He's speaking to you about your being able to glorify Him in your body, which is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and be blessed as a result. We will be with you next week, and coming up, we're going to be talking about wellness in our spiritual lives, and so there are a lot of good things coming in the future. Tell someone This is a little bit of shameless self-promotion, but tell someone about this podcast. Tell someone that, you know what, these people sound like they have a little bit to say and can be a blessing. Share it with someone. Don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube channel or on Spotify or Apple Podcast, Apple Music. Make sure that you sign up, and we'll be back with you next week. The Lord bless you.